everybody. Welcome back to the Film Buds podcast. This is episode number 156. And my name is Henry.
And I'm Paul.
This week, we got a pretty good show for you. We have a review of Pixar's Soul, which is currently on Disney+. And then I figured we'll touch on that Netflix news about them releasing at least one movie every single week this year. Mm-hmm. And so we'll get to that. We have a listener question concerning the current state of Pixar, so maybe we'll wrap that into the Soul review, but just depends on how the discussion goes. Other stuff we watched, you know the deal. So it's great to have you here. And Paul, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty well, you know. It was a nice, quiet Wednesday today, which was enjoyable. You know, just plugging away, working at watches stuff for Film Buds, doing pre-interviews and working on Sane Show. And I'm trying to remember, was the last time that I on here, had I hit the quarterfinalist list for the story that I'd written?
No.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I hit the quarterfinalist. It was like...
Congrats, man.
Thank you. It was 1,500. It's now down to like 300 people and some change.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. There are a few more deadlines, or not deadlines, but like cutoff points. One of them is January 21st, I think, is the next one. And then one in February and one in March. So we'll have to see where it goes. But
well, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
How are you doing? How's school?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, all considering. I mean, it's been a pretty shitty week here in the United States. I mean, amongst other places as well, but had a pretty crazy week here. And so putting all that aside, doing okay. And I started school back in this music business program here in North Carolina, and I have one in-person class, and thankfully it's, you know, I felt quite safe going there, and that put me at ease for sure. Otherwise, doing some interviews for the Music Buds, you know, some composers and other people, so check that out if you enjoy that kind of thing. And sorry, got a Instagram direct message. Other than that, yeah, just not too much. Staying pretty busy, you know.
No, I get that completely. Hard to. It can sometimes be a little bit hard to stay focused on the things that you have going on when everything is kind of, you know, seemingly going nuts. But yes, you got to keep moving forward.
Yeah. I guess the one in-house thing to mention is the Disney live-action bonus show that you and I recorded along with Henry Wilkinson is now available on thefilmbuds.bandcamp.com, and you can get that for just a $1 donation. That's a pretty good deal, Paul.
Yeah, and you know, if you're really uncertain, there's a sample posted somewhere as well. So yeah,
yes. There is the quote unquote chapter or intro of the show is on the main feed where you're listening to this, and so you can check that out. And then the full episode is available on Bandcamp. So, you know, the donations just go to help support the monthly upkeep of the show and the website and all that stuff. So it's always nice having that extra support. And thank you to the people who have bought it already. So we appreciate it. Yeah. Other than that, not too much else, Paul. Anything else you want to mention, man, before we get to it?
Nah, let's get down to this thing.
Alrighty. Well, let's get into our review of Soul. And we do have a clip this time, so take a listen.
Dr. Borgenson will be matched with Soul number 22. Oh, we're going to get into this now. Excuse me.
22, you come out of this dimension right now.
How many times do I have to tell you? I don't want to go to Earth.
Stop fighting this.
I don't want to.
You will go to Earth and have a life.
Make me.
22 has been at the U Seminar for quite some time and has had such notable mentors as Gandhi, Abraham Lincoln, and Mother Teresa.
I made her cry.
Ignore that.
All right. Well, as I said, Soul is now on Disney+. It's directed by Pete Docter and co-directed by Kemp Powers. It stars Jamie Foxx, Tina Fey, Graham Norton, Rachel House, Alice Braga, Richard Ayoade, Felicia Rashad, Angela Bassett, Am I forgetting anybody big? Wes Studi. That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are a few little cameo spots from like Questlove and Daveed Diggs, and that's pretty much everyone.
Yeah. The synopsis is a musician who has lost his passion for music is transported out of his body and must find his way back with the help of an infant soul learning about herself. Well, this one, it was what, your maybe top 3 or 4 film of 2020, Paul, I think?
Yeah, this was one of my top films for 2020. It was top 5. I really liked it. This was my second time watching it. I watched it when it came out and I rewatched it for this. And yeah, a lot of my opinions held up on the second rewatch. There were a few things that I liked more second time around. I think that it's a great film for a lot of reasons. I think that it's got some really incredible, beautiful moments, both visually and narratively. I think that it's got a really great sound to it. There's a lot that's really, really positive for the film. But I also do think that some of my flaws that I had with the movie held up and were actually maybe even a little bit stronger on second viewing. But overall, I still think that it's a really great movie.
Yeah.
How do you think?
Well, yeah, this one was in my honorable mentions of last year. And I think same as you, I really like Pixar, and Pete Docter, Monsters, Inc. is in my top 5 films of all time. I love Monsters, Inc. Yeah, and Inside Out is another one of my favorites as well. So I am always excited when he does a film. Overall, I liked it. I don't think I liked it as much as some people do. Mm-hmm. I thought that there were undeniably some great, very profound moments that, really ring true for Pixar and that really hit me emotionally. However, I really found the movie to be the two halves or the two storylines of the film to be very unbalanced in terms of my interest. I thought everything in the real world was great. I thought it was very charming, entertaining, thoughtful, and then I thought almost everything in the purgatory, afterlife, whatever you want to call it, was, to be kind of blunt, borderline not good. I just thought it was overly complicated, visually not very interesting. I didn't really find the characters in that world to be all that funny or charming. And so I felt like going back and forth, it would really kill the pacing for me, having to always go back to that world. I honestly, and it may just be very typical me, I would have loved for it to have just been a film about a jazz musician trying to make it as a musician in the real world. And I would have been okay with that. And while I get that some of the ideas are kind of hinge on that purgatory storyline, I still found it to be very unbalanced and inconsistent for how much I was invested in the movie.
No, for sure. I completely get where you're at. I think that I was talking with a friend of mine, Nick Delgadillo, who does some written film criticism and that sort of thing. And he and I were both sort of at the same place where, so for me, the Joe stuff is great. I see that story of someone who's struggling with their passion and with what it is that they want to do and about wanting to see other people being passionate. And I see some of that stuff and getting lost in an artistic moment where, everything just sort of fuzzes out around you and grays out around you and you can get so lost in it. It's beautiful and it's really, really powerful and it resonates really, really strongly. I think, even though they're using jazz, I think that you can kind of ignore the whole almost adherence to jazz that the movie has and really just sort of use jazz as any kind of metaphor for, whatever it is that gives you that passion, which is part of why 22 keeps using jazzing, but that's a different point. The issue is that they did such a good job on all of that and on making that New York so good and on making his relationships with his family so clear and these people in his community and things like that, that then I felt like they really got lost in what the mechanics were of that of the great before and the great beyond and all of this kind of thing. And so, you know, it's like you got to get your spark. You got to find the thing that makes you interested in living. And then you have lost souls who are people who kind of got, you know, so obsessed or anxious or whatever along the way that they lost themselves. And you go through this whole journey of him sort of, you know, of Joe, our main person, questioning what is his passion. And I don't think that the movie ever really makes any sort of clear decision on what his journey is in terms of, is his journey about trying to identify what his passion is, or is it just about him trying to identify passion in life again? And for so much of the movie, it feels like it's building on this thing of like teaching versus music, because so many of her experiences, 22's experiences, race through her as a teacher, and some of her experiences on Earth are her teaching people different perspectives, or, you know, getting Colleen to be a teacher again. Then at the end of the movie, when it doesn't kind of do anything with any of that, and it doesn't make Joe pick a passion, and it's just kind of this like whomp, and like 22 just sort of gets a spark that isn't really related to anything. She just now has the will to live, I think makes it very narratively messy, so that then when you get to the end and it's just sort of like, live every day like it's important because it is. That it's just sort of like a, well, great, but like, what am I gonna fucking do with that? Like, you know, to an extent. Sure. And so I just think that as much as it gets right, I think that that's the reason that it isn't at least resonating with me, is that I feel like that whole narrative on what is your passion and finding your passion and just ends up getting lost and muddled and confused. And I feel like they worked so hard on trying to get certain other things spot on that they kind of lost track of that, because the music is phenomenal. They got a jazz musician to be sort of the jazz pianist for Joe. It's Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross that do the soundtrack for The Great Before. And all that stuff's really great and really cool. And then it's just sort of, the narrative gets a little lost for me. And also, I don't think it helps that I don't much like 22.
Yeah, I would agree. And like, with that, I like Tina Fey a lot. I mean, she's done a lot of great stuff, but I feel like she's in that zone that she gets into sometimes. And oftentimes it can just be with comedians, I think, especially, where they're at 11 all the time. I felt like she was constantly shouting, just, you know, so excited all the time. And it just got a little tiresome. And, you know, that's something kind of frequent in animated films, to have that kind of character. And yeah, I agree. I still love Tina Fey, but I did not like the direction and that performance that much. Yeah.
And, you know, I think that she was meant to be this sort of, she's obviously meant to be sort of an older soul, but she's, I think, very much meant to be sort of this kind of millennial derelict character. And so I think that having this kind of, this is Tina Fey, this is obviously like a 40-year-old woman voice, you know, this is a Karen voice, then trying to be sort of doing like a Broad City or Lena Dunham kind of, you know, millennial derelict character,
right,
didn't really strike for me. I felt like it needed to be someone a little bit more naturally obnoxious. You know, when I hear Tina Fey, I don't think, oh God, make it stop. It may not be like the world's best voice, but it's also not a voice that when I hear it, I'm like, oh, you gotta stop. You please write it down. Anything else, text it to me. Don't speak. So yeah, it just kind of felt like a misfire. And also, I love Pete Docter. I think he's done great work. I know that he is a very busy man running Pixar's, you know, whole division now that John Lasseter is gone. But both Onward and, this is a little thing that I noticed, both Onward and Soul have, in a weird way, kind of the same loose concept of like, let's focus on like this existential idea about life and what it means, which has worked great for some of their other films. And then it turns out to just be sort of this pursuit film of two oddball characters who are now on a quest, a journey, across a sort of fantastical landscape pursued by a relentless authority figure.
Right.
And that's sort of the same bare bones of Onward and the same bare bones of this in a weird way. And so I just, it's good. It's great. It's not one of like the Pixar primo films for me. Parts of it feel fantastic and fresh and new and exciting, and parts of it feel like a Pixar movie.
Yeah. How did you feel about Jamie Foxx? Because I feel like sometimes Jamie Foxx can get into the territory of being like at a super high energy level constantly. I think and not necessarily in this film, but I think there are times where he gets into that similar territory that a lot of actors just have a habit of doing, whether that's natural or whether that's a piece of direction. I think overall he's fine in this. I wish that each of them had spent more time in their own body, especially Jamie Foxx, just to kind of keep it more relatable.
Yeah.
But no, I agree with all that. There's just something with this movie, and Pete Docter seems to have this like fascination with reality, and I don't know what you would call it. The world's like an Inside Out. There's the dream world and the real world, and even in Monsters Inc. there's the real world, and then there's the
monster world.
Like, the monster world, and even the where all the doors go. There's like that, even like that new dimension almost. And so I think, but in those two films, I think he balances it a lot better, because in this, I never felt like I had the time to settle down in either one. I felt like it jumped back so frequently that I was like, oh man, I was just getting to really get into this scene, and then, oh no, we're back in the purgatory. And then, oh no, now we're back in the real world. And so I found that a little tiresome, because it didn't allow me to really get invested as much as I wanted to be. I mean, like certain scenes I loved, like the barber scene about him explaining, his passion. I love that. And I like the scene where Joe's in the subway and he sees the guy, I guess, playing guitar. And it's just those moments of magic and of, the love and appreciation for music that is great. It's just that the overall storytelling did not do it for me as much as his past films have. Yeah.
I like Jamie Foxx. I'm trying to remember what the last thing that I saw of Jamie Foxx is. I think it might be Baby Driver.
Did you see Just Mercy?
No.
He's great in that.
Okay. I think the last thing that I saw him in was Baby Driver, where I felt like he was the right amount of scenery chewing, but he's also been the wrong amount of scenery chewing, and that's The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So he definitely can run hot and cold. I wouldn't say that he's one of the consistent actors of our generation. There are some who are great in fits and spurts, and some who are great maybe once and then burn out. I think that he's one of the ones that has really great performances and really great stretches of performances here and there, but every once in a while, there's just one that doesn't click, that doesn't mesh. As far as the pacing of the movie, and I guess I think, and you're certainly, welcome to jump in on whether or not you agree or disagree. I honestly wonder if Soul really honestly was like the first Pixar movie that really wasn't at all for children. Like if this was like Pixar really doing almost an animated comedy for more like the late teen to like older crowd, more so than.
I would agree with that. I mean, like for example, the scene where in the, I know it's not the right term, but the purgatory world, so to speak, is when there's the sand creature, or the, creation like looming over the characters. Like that's, as if I was a kid, I would be fairly terrified of that. And so I don't know if something like that is really meant for kids, which, it's okay for them to make a film that's more centered towards adults. Whether a kid will like that or not, or a family will like that or not, that's purely subjective. But in that way, I did like the movie. However, it was those kind of scenes were balanced or complemented by scenes in the real world where I would almost think of like The Secret Life of Pets, where there's like the cat running around and screaming, and like it's just scenes that got very, very silly and then got very serious and adult that did not mesh for me, at least.
No, I get that completely. I guess on second rewatch, though, as I was sitting there, I was like, I do feel like kids would be bored to tears by this movie for like long stretches of it, just because it's a chatty film. Like and it's not like Inside Out, where a lot of my cutaways to other characters can be really funny, where we get to see Riley just driven by fear, anxiety, and anger, which, beget a lot of really great comedic moments, and cutting away to the emotions of other people's minds. This is the souls that we have, and here's Group A, and here's Group B, and Group B is really just this one character on the trail of these others. And, it's inconsistent, because it doesn't feel, I guess, necessarily like something that I would immediately think to put on with like my nieces and nephews out of all of the Pixar films. But then it also, to your point, doesn't really hit, I guess, as hard as like an adult film should.
Right. And like with the performances, like comparing it to Inside Out, the other Pete Docter movie, it's like, I found not only the characters, but also like Amy Poehler in that movie. I loved her performance in that. And, then comparing it to these, I think it's lesser, which, it's not saying it's a bad performance, but overall, of course, the animation is great. I mean, that's kind of a given with Pixar. Like New York City looks incredible. The lighting, and shading, and the color palette is fantastic. And that's something I will never tire of. And, we might get talking about that more with the listener question. Yeah, the Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross score is great. And as you had said on the last episode, it's one of those dives into art and creation that could get someone who is not interested in jazz or whatever it is they're depicting getting interested in it, and I think it happened to me a little bit. I wanted to go immediately listen to jazz after this. And so that is not something that should be downplayed. I mean, that's a pretty impressive accomplishment for a film, like an animated film, to get you interested in that subject matter.
Yeah, I mean, to reference both the episode where I talked about Soul before, and also the episode where we talk about the Nutcracker, the bonus episode,
Great film.
Misty Copeland definitely had an impact on like the ballet movement in America, as she rose to prominence, and that's certainly why she shows up then in Nutcracker in the Four Realms, is because, she's riding this moment of like being the face of American ballet. And so, this movie gets to kind of go and take jazz to this more approachable level. 'Cause like Whiplash isn't for people who are new to jazz, to understand the inner workings of a jazz band. And it's John Batiste that they brought in for this. And there's a extra that you can watch on Disney Plus where he talks about wanting the jazz to feel approachable and like anyone could kind of get into jazz. And I think that he definitely did nail that mark. There's some great fastidious detail work in the world, in the sound, in so much of the technical portions of the film, and even in certain story bits. But then it just falls off in others. And honestly, I was just thinking about it a second ago when we were talking about Tina and Amy and the comparison of her to Amy. Tina was always, I guess from my perspective, at least on SNL, way more of a writer. Whereas like Amy and Kristen, I felt like I saw more in skits. And so now it feels like I'm getting Tina Fey doing like her best Amy or Kristen. And I'm not sure that tracks, because that's just not her type.
Yeah, that's fair. I love her in something like 30 Rock. That's great. But
Perfect.
But I agree. But no, with getting interested in the subject matter, it's similar to Queen's Gambit, which has blown up, and it's there have been all these reports of chessboards flying off the shelves, because people just immediately want to go and play chess, which is so cool. And I think this, maybe to a lesser extent or level, it has that interest in jazz, or piques your curiosity for jazz,
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, I think, and I don't want to be repeating myself or hating too much on it, because overall I did like it. I think just last thing is the last moment, not to spoil it, but you're like, you're in the purgatory world, and there's this kind of buildup of suspense and tension, and then it immediately cuts right back to the real world for this final last scene, and then it cuts to black, and that's it. And I was like, it felt very abrupt. I was like, wait, now it's over? Because I felt like there was going to be a little bit more explanation and a little bit more time to let things marinate, but it just cut away. And I was like, oh, okay. And so it left a bit of a bad taste in my mouth.
No, I completely agree. And I think that's also part of why, going back to what I said earlier, they don't really make any kind of decision about what the movie was about, what his passion was, what any of his journey meant. It just suddenly meant enjoy life. And also, honestly, I'm still not convinced that motherfucker shouldn't have died. I'm still...
Yeah.
I'm not convinced. So there's also that. I think that there could have been some merit in letting Joe stay dead. Maybe that's part of the thing. Maybe that's like part of what should really be the thing driving home your message is like, yep, you did a great job, Joe. And we really appreciate that. Solid work on getting 22 out the door. And now time to go for real, like some consequence. Maybe it would have been a little bit of a bite that would have made that whole, you got to enjoy life one time round, but, oh, well.
Yeah. Well, how does this compare to, I don't know, the last 4 or 5 Pixar films? I mean, I think just looking back, Inside Out, I think is by far the best of their recent slate for me. Okay,
so their recent films include Cars 3, Onward, Great. Inside Out, The Good Dinosaur, Monsters U, and Toy Story 4, and Incredibles 2. Those are like some of their more recent ones, going back the last like 5 years.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Inside Out is definitely sort of without a question, I think, the best one of that group. After that, I'd probably say maybe Incredibles 2, followed by probably Soul, or probably Soul. I don't know. Onward is above Cars 3 probably, but it's toward the end. Cars 3 is probably last place. No offense to the dear fans of the Cars franchise.
A little pun there, Paul. Nice.
Thank you.
And I whenever Cars 3 is brought up, I always say that was our very first review on Film Buds.
Oh yeah. Good old Cars 3.
Yeah, which I can say I don't hate. I've rewatched it, and I think it's a charming movie. It's not best of the bunch by any means, but no, I would say Inside Out, and I do like Monsters Inc. so much. I think Monsters University might be second, and I did rewatch Onward, as I said on the last show, and I actually did enjoy that more so on the rewatch. So it might be up there, but yeah, Soul, I don't know. It's hard to say because it is a challenging movie, but I don't know if it's one that I'm really thinking about all that much, or perhaps maybe I just haven't had enough time to really think about it as much as I have with the others, but it's not really one that it comes to mind really. Yeah, no, I completely get where you're at. For me, it's middle of the road sort of Pixar, it's Brave, it's The Good Dinosaur, it's here, it's doing fine, it's doing well, Cars, the first one, it's fine, it's good, it's got a good message, it's got some bold, great, incredible moments that definitely make me think, oh yeah, that was a nice part of that movie.
But overall, it doesn't strike me and sort of gobsmack me the way that I think of when I think Inside Out, when I think WALL-E, when I think The Incredibles, you know, these really visceral experiences that were just powerful. I haven't seen Toy Story 4, so I can tell you whether that's any good or not. My nieces and nephews love it, which make me suspicious. So,
yes. Paul, we should do a Cars trilogy bonus show.
Deal. Are we also going to do all of the Mater spinoffs and bullshit as well?
Sure. Yeah, don't worry. We already have a Despicable Me franchise planned.
Oh, good. We're just going to, they're just going to have a great time with us for
all
a little
the
while.
specials on Netflix, you know, all that great stuff.
Yeah.
Short films. But anyways, all right, man. Well, anything else about Soul? And now, do you want to do the listener question right after this to keep the conversation going?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, anything else about Soul in particular?
No, not really. I think that I'm all right.
All right. Out of 5 stars?
You know, honestly, even though I sounded very down on it, ultimately I'm still going to give it, I think, a 4. I still really, really like it. When it hits me, like it hits me, you know, like a ton of bricks. When it really, for me, when it strikes, it strikes. It's just that so much of that is reserved for like the first 2/3 of the movie.
Yes. I guess to fall into like the critics curse, I will say 4 stars as well, even though I was kind of down on it. You know, I agree. There were moments that really did hit me very well. And so, yeah, overall, I liked it. It may not sound like it, you know, over the last 30 minutes we've been talking about it, but I enjoyed it.
I'm being critical because I care.
Yes, exactly. So it's a 4 for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's fair.
Okay, well, we'll do news right after this next segment, excuse me. But we do have a listener question. So the FilmBuds podcast at gmail.com is where you can reach us at. Also Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at FilmBuds. So please, if you have not followed us there, please do that. And don't forget to subscribe and rate the show if you haven't already. And so this one comes from Darren. I think we may have heard from Darren in the past, and he says, "Dear Film Buds, what's your viewpoint of Pixar? Is it still relevant, making good movies, and will it ever get back to its classic early days? Enjoy the podcast." Thanks, Darren. Paul, it's a loaded question.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on there. Do I still think Pixar is relevant? Yes, absolutely. Name me anyone else who is as much of a name in animation. You know, they're practically Google. Like, do people know that other people make Disney and animated movies? Sure, but like, it's either a Disney Pixar movie or it's not, and everything that's in the not category is just over there. No one, I think, could really give you an adequate guess of who makes what.
Not a DreamWorks animation fan, Paul?
I like DreamWorks animation. I'm just saying, I think the average Joe is just like, are those the ones that make the Minions? Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, you know, so Pixar's still definitely relevant. I really appreciate that they did do 2 original films back to back, even if I don't think that they're amongst like the peaks of Pixar. I think that they're really good. And I, again, respect that it's a little bit of an acknowledgement. You know, you're right. We did sequels kind of too long, too consistently. We're getting back and doing a few more originals. Do I think that they're ever going to get back to classic Pixar? No, if only just because that was a time and a place and a group of people at a point in their life, and you can never go back to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, and Paul, we forgot Coco in our discussion.
Oh, yeah, Coco. Geez, I am a blithering idiot. I did forget about Coco. Coco's great. I love Coco. See? So they're still making really relevant, fantastic films. Like, Coco's incredible. That's one of my favorites. That's one that always gets me. I can't believe that I forgot it. I'm a blithering moron. But that's beside the point.
It's all right.
So, No, so they're still relevant, but they're never going to be classic Pixar. You know, the Renaissance was the Renaissance not because it actually was exactly what original classic Disney was, but because it managed to kind of capture a zeitgeist and bring it to a time and place and freshen it up and sprucing it up and make good stories. So we'll never go back, and if you want further proof, there was an interview that Pete Docter did recently where he talked about how, like, sequels are essentially guaranteed because that's the only way to ensure commercial viability. Which is a really blunt way to say, you know, we're always going to make sequels because sequels make money because people like going to things that they're familiar with. You people keep paying to go to them more than you go to originals, so we're going to keep making sequels. So
yeah. And that doing that could or does allow them to then make originals, to have the money to do that. So, you know, if it means we get, you know, Cars 4 or whatever, but it means we get one more original in the process, I'm totally down for that. Yeah,
you know, I definitely don't want an imbalance of, you know, a whole bunch of sequels to just like a handful of originals. And, you know, once upon a time, they were really successful with a bunch of originals. But the truth is, like, there just isn't the appetite for that. So if things change, if you want things to change, dear listener, you have to, you know, go and change your consumption habits. And that's kind of
we're the problem. We keep going to see them.
Yeah, I know. So, that's, I guess, kind of my broad stroke on Pixar. And I think that they probably will be around for as long as they can, you know, continue to supply something that people want. How long that is, who knows?
Yeah. I'm about the same as you. You know, I think they had a string of, you know, like 5 out of 5 masterpieces for a while, but I think that they have fallen into, and it's, you know, natural, I think, to have some duds here and there. And obviously with longevity, as you were saying, the kind of commercial viability, I'm fine with them doing, you know, sequels to get these originals out, and I appreciate that. I still think that there is a level that Pixar operates at that no other animation studio really does. I mean, Laika is also amazing. I love Laika, and they have their own kind of unique qualities, but I think Pixar as well. And also dealing with, or looking back at the early films in their own way, they were the first to do that. And so those films, in a way, are going to be held closer by people purely because they were the first ones, like, you know, Toy Story and, you know, Monsters, Inc. or whatever. And so those classic early days, some of that was just the freshness of the material and in the way in which they did it. And so, and I think either way, those films are great. It's not just nostalgia, but, you know, I don't know if they'll ever maybe have a hit every single time they release a movie now, but I don't know if I really need that from them, you know?
No, and I mean, Pete Docter's been there a long time, and not to, I guess, you know, sort of zap any of the magic out of the Pixar experience, but like, some of this is definitely a packaged thing that they have figured out, you know, how to consistently at least be a Cars 2 level of good minimum all of the time. And so part of that is the sort of, you know, the business machination of the whole thing is, you know, they found a way to consistently package this thing. How many of these stories really focus on oddball duos? How many of these stories focus on quests? When you sit down and start thinking about it, it's going to be a lot of them. So it's and you're right. It's never going to be what it's going to be because those early ones were pioneer, you know, groundbreaking things, and it's not going to take on any kind of new form again until there's like radically new blood in the thing. And right now, that's just not what it is. You know, Pete Docter is classic Pixar family man, you know. Rachel House, who does the voice of Terry, is also the voice of Moana's grandmother in Moana. So, you know, it's a part of the Disney thing. It's got those wheels greased. It knows exactly what it's doing. It'll never go back, and that's fine.
Yeah. And, you know, with like, we're, you know, even like when I was talking about Mank, how at least I thought it was kind of lesser Fincher. It's almost the same thing with, you know, Cars 3, where it's not a great movie, but there are still such, you know, whether it's the animation quality or it's just certain emotional beats that not many other studios match.
Yeah.
As, you know, and so there are films like that will stick with me more, even if it's not a 5 out of 5, more so than other animated films that come out from other studios.
For sure. I mean, just even on a technical level, I mean, Toy Story 4 has a shot that includes a digital lens diopter. No other animated film, as far as I'm aware, has a lens diopter shot. You know, I was noticing that there were moments in Soul where like the depth of field was so shallow that you were starting to lose sort of early bits of Joe as he started to kind of get into the zone where you were really only focusing in on so much of his face.
Right.
So they're incredibly technically gifted. I can't tell you another animated film from any other 3D animated studio that I watched and went, the technical level on display here is, you know, second to none. I've never felt that way watching a Shrek movie. I've never watched a Shrek movie and went, wow, fucking groundbreaking, you know, just on the visuals alone. So we'll have to see what happens with them. But no one does it quite like Pixar still. And you're right. And that's also why they're still relevant, is just because on a technical level, they're still wizards and they're still some of the best. Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else about Pixar in general? And anybody out there, please feel free to send in your comments on this topic, your favorite Pixar films, you know, whether it's on email or comment on social media. Please feel free. We love hearing from you. Paul, anything for you, man?
No, I think if Pixar wants to do something exciting, then I definitely think that it will require opening up the doors a little bit and trying to get a little bit out of that Pixar style, which is going to be harder for them. And it might not happen for a while just because, you know, Pete Docter, no offense to Pete Docter, maybe he's a little bit of a Tim Cook, you know, Steve Jobs and Apple and that kind of thing was sort of once in a lifetime, and Tim Cook's doing perfectly great with Apple, but he's no fucking Steve Jobs. There was only one Steve Jobs. John Lasseter was a creep. He deserved to be fired. But what they did and what that team put together for a few years was lightning in a bottle. And so, you know, it'll probably be a long time before that place ever really gets back to like being something groundbreaking, and it's probably only going to come with new blood.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, the FilmBuds podcast at gmail.com is where you can send us those questions. So please do. And all right. Well, I guess we can touch briefly on this news that just came out hot off the presses about Netflix. So, of course, Netflix has already been releasing huge amounts of original content, movies, TV shows over the years, and just getting, you know, increasing it as time goes on. But they just announced that there will be new original films released every single week in 2021, which is, looking at the list, it's over 70 movies.
Yeah.
Some of them very big, like the Adam McKay film with Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Chris Evans. That's a huge film. The Woman in the Window, the Amy Adams film. So there are some big films coming out on Netflix this year, and it's going to be constant, which is, hey, perfect for us, Paul.
You know, and I guess to clarify some of the machinations of Netflix and this deal for some of our listeners, if you're not really up on it or don't understand how Netflix works. Not every Netflix original that comes out was conceived by a Netflix producer, made by a Netflix crew, and a good number of these films that are coming out are acquisitions. They went to festivals, they bought them, people went, produced the movie, shopped it around to studios, and Netflix was the one that picked it up. So they're really acting as distributor exhibitor, you know, kind of at the same time for a lot of these. That being said, look, they're aggressive. They want Oscars. They want to be a massive studio. They want to, you know, be synonymous, I think, with Apple and Microsoft and Google. And I think that they want to be taken in that kind of breath, and Disney, you know. So I'm not surprised that they're pushing such an aggressive agenda. They've got the buying power because the market is still saying that they, you know, are still viable. And so their debt is still fine. You know, they can go into whatever fucking debt that they want. It's all still on fire. The only question that I have, and I think that it's an interesting thing that I have no idea if anyone's thought about it really, is like, what the fuck happens if this massive library of content goes down? When when Netflix goes tits up, where does this content go? Because it's like a digital fucking loss of the library at Alexandria. You know what I mean?
Right.
Countless shows and movies and specials. Where's it going to be? Who's going to provide it?
Lost to time.
Yeah, you know, and so I guess
you have to watch it now.
My question for everyone is this, is, you know, it's exciting, it's fun, it's cool, but also by kind of increasing the disposability of film, aren't we kind of undermining some of its value? And also by always having everything through these digital streamers, you know, at a certain point, the jig is going to be up, and then what's going to happen to all of that stuff? Where is it going to go? And that's, I think, sort of where my question went the moment that I heard this, was like, cool. Where can I get some of these on discs so that way once you're gone,
yeah,
it's not like there go 100 of my favorite things. Bye.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. It's I guess it all depends on if we outlive Netflix. You know?
We might not. Who knows?
Yeah. So, you know, that's an interesting point, but it'll be quite a year, and I guess it's also perfect considering the pandemic. You know, a lot of people are staying at home and need stuff to watch, so I guess it's better for Netflix and better for us as well. Yeah, they're releasing all this content.
Well, and you know, just because it's getting released doesn't mean that it's good, folks. It could all be Hallmark content level. You know, we could be doomed to a year of some of the worst fucking Netflix content you ever did see.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Well, we'll keep you updated on that, and I'm sure we'll end up reviewing a fair number of those.
Probably. Let's shoot for all of them. Let's be bold.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, Paul. Any other news you want to touch on, man?
No, I think that's pretty much it. You know, there's so much news happening right now that it can be really hard to keep up with all of it. So I won't inundate the good people with you know, too much more.
Yes, I'm sure with everything going on right now, people, they need to know about Netflix. You know, they're not interested in anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, it's not like right now, as we're talking about Netflix, there's an impeachment happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can balance that one for yourselves, you know, decide which one.
You know, maybe it's a self-care moment. I don't know. I'm not going to judge.
Perhaps so. All right, well, I guess we can end off with our picks of the week, other stuff we've been watching. Paul, you want to kick things off?
Sure. My pick of the week is actually going to be Trial of the Chicago 7.
Oh, yeah.
It was one of the ones that I didn't get to see from 2020. Same. So, dear listeners, I followed through. I said I was going to start watching those. I started. It was good. I liked it. I think that as far as Sorkin goes, I think I prefer him as a writer more than a director. Molly's Game was a really great directorial effort. I think Trial of the Chicago 7 a little bit less so. I'd have preferred, I think, an 8-part series where one of each episode focused on one of the 8 defendants on trial for the events of the riots. Very topical film. I think that 2 of our leads were miscast, which kind of, you know, drew me out of it a little bit. It's one of my lesser Sacha Baron Cohen performances. I also think that Eddie Redmayne does very just okay.
Yeah.
And so I think that it could have been a little bit better, but overall I really, really enjoyed it. And I think that it has a lot to say that's very relevant and very topical to right now. And I think that it's definitely worth a watch.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been wanting to check that one out as well.
What about you?
I have a handful of things. So first of all, I've been watching on Hulu the Mary Tyler Moore Show, which is the 60s sitcom, and I absolutely love it. I mean, I've been watching a lot of more classic TV these days, like, Columbo and Rockford Files, but this sitcom, it feels, I wasn't alive in the 60s, but it feels just as fresh as I'm sure it did back then. It's so relatable and so funny and so genuine, and it's great escapist entertainment. And then a couple rewatches. I rewatched Spielberg, the HBO documentary about Steven Spielberg, which is still a cool watch. It doesn't go into it doesn't deep dive into Spielberg as much as someone like myself might like it to, but it's still a really entertaining, informative documentary about filmmaking and about Spielberg's legacy and career. And then I also rewatched, because we were talking about it, I rewatched Saving Private Ryan, which is a favorite film of mine, and I still think it's incredible. It's so powerful, and the amazing thing about it that Spielberg does well is that even though it's so heavy, there are laugh out loud moments, like genuine moments of comedy in that movie. So I love that. And then I also rewatched Mad Max Fury Road as well, which is my favorite film, and it's still great. And also terrifying to watch that and think about the world now. So
no, those are all really good picks. I love Mad Max Fury Road. It's a shame that on 4K the fire looks so fucking weird. Have you seen the black and chrome edition? I have seen parts of it. I haven't watched the full black and chrome. I have watched Logan Noir as well. Similar concept. No, that all sounds really good. You talking about Columbo made me think every Columbus Day I actually celebrate Columbo Day, and I send everyone that I know a picture of Columbo.
Nice. Yes, Columbo. I mean, anyone who's listened to the show for a while knows I love Columbo. I've become obsessed with it.
No, that's all really good. And yeah, the first Mad Max movie was supposed to take place like in 2021. So.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, this is the year, Paul.
Started from the bottom. Now we're here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's about it for me, man. Any other things for you?
The world is nuts.
Yeah.
Listen to professionals. You don't know everything, and it's really important sometimes that someone tell you that frankly again. I don't know everything. I'm just very ardent about film, and that's probably where I have the most opinion. And also, it's film, so I'm allowed to be frivolous and ridiculous with the things that I say and how hyperbolic I get. But you don't get to be hyperbolic and ridiculous and as opinionated as I am about actual serious shit, because, spoiler alert, we're all just figuring it out. Let's figure it out together.
Let's do it. Paul, you took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that is about it for the show this week, sadly. That's about it. Next week, I mean, Paul, it's 2021, clean slate. We can go anywhere we want, however we want. Any ideas? One movie. I mean, we don't have to do this next week. It's just one that came to mind. Did you see Mortal Engines, the Peter Jackson produced fantasy film from a couple years ago about the moving cities?
No, I have not.
Oh, we gotta throw that in there sometime.
We'll throw that one in. What do we have, like a new release coming out for Netflix?
Netflix, I don't know. I know there are like a couple, like that Promising Young Woman will be on VOD, but for Netflix, I don't know if there is anything off. I guess the last thing they released was that Pieces of a Woman, that Shia LaBeouf, Vanessa Kirby film. But I wouldn't be surprised if they have something for this week.
We'll figure something out. Stay in suspense, dear listener.
Yes. Think about nothing else.
Fret over it. Wake up in the night sweating about it.
Yes, as we all are. So cool. Yeah, well, and all of that will be updated on social media and at thefilmbuds.com. And once again, don't forget to check out the Disney bonus show at thefilmbuds.bandcamp.com. It was a really great time chatting about those movies, and so make sure to listen to that. And yeah, well, Paul, man, it's always great to see you.
Great to see you too, man.
Yeah, everybody just please, stay safe. Be optimistic as best you can. It's, some dark days, but just, keep up hope and be smart and be safe. All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, and we'll see you next time.
Have a good evening, folks.